I remember at that time, it was Sophia who initiated the breakup, right? While Joseph's girlfriend was away in the restroom, the classmates began to gossip. Sophia, that's me. Joseph was sitting opposite, his lips curled into a faint smile, but his eyes were exceedingly cold. This was our first meeting in 6 years since the breakup. Everything was somewhat unexpected. I only came because the class president said Joseph wouldn't be here. I didn't expect to meet him here. Now, Joseph is a successful and prominent young entrepreneur in the city, a returned talent from abroad. Dressed in a suit, his appearance is striking. The watch on his wrist alone is worth a fortune. Everyone holds him in high regard. In contrast, I'm no longer what I used to be. It was indeed her who suggested breaking up first. Joseph spoke calmly, answering everyone's curiosity. Everyone had their speculations. It was nothing more than thinking I was materialistic, couldn't endure hardship, bet on the wrong person, and lost everything. Sophia, I heard the guy you followed after that got locked up, right? And you even took on his debts. You came to this reunion to ask for money, didn't you? Amidst the ridicule of others, Joseph's calm and profound eyes always rested on me, not uttering a word. I smiled awkwardly, not responding. The door opened, and Joseph's girlfriend Vivian came in. Sensing the odd atmosphere, she asked with a smile, "What happened while I was gone?" Joseph's demeanor changed from silence, gently holding her hand. "Nothing, just catching up on old times." Vivian sat down composedly, her gaze fixed on me, her smile revealing dimples. "Joseph mentioned you to me. If you hadn't let go back then, you would have been the lady of the group by now." Many eyes revealed a hint of schadenfreude. Back then, Sophia's family was at its peak, and wherever I went, I was the center of attention. This envy wouldn't just fade away with time. Instead, years later, it became their reason to kick me when I was down. Joseph spoke up to break the awkwardness, his voice cold and firm. "It's all in the past." Everyone fell silent, understanding the boss didn't want to continue this topic, and started talking about other things. His girlfriend raised a toast to me. "Thank you for letting him go. You must come to our wedding." I silently covered the scars on my wrist, numbly saying, "Congratulations. Why didn't you explain things to him?" On the phone, my best friend Stella was indignant on my behalf. The class reunion ended early, and I stood in the cold wind wrapped in my coat, exhaling a breath of warm air. "He has a girlfriend now." There was a pause on the other end of the phone. "He has a girlfriend?" Stella was incredulous. "Yes." Classmates left in twos and threes, the streetlight's glow refracted on the snowy ground, looking like shattered glass. "It's a pity you finally saw him, after trying so hard." Stella, no one waits in the same place forever. Some things, if not said at the moment, only add disgust when mentioned later. The cold wind made my eyes both cold and painful. I blinked my sore eyes. I've given up. Even after struggling so hard for many years to come out of the mire, wanting to meet him again in the most dignified way, it was already too late. "Okay, let's talk more when you get back." The temperature had already dropped below zero before the spring festival, and taxis were hard to hail. Standing there for a while, my hands became numb with cold. My phone displayed, "In queue." Behind me, the sound of high heels clicking approached, accompanied by a woman's gentle voice. "Joseph, the snow is so beautiful. It's cold outside, go to the car first. I'll join you in a bit." Joseph's voice was distinctly recognizable. "Then hurry up." As the woman passed by me, she gave me a meaningful glance. Then she walked towards a nearby car, her movements revealing a bracelet on her wrist, strikingly conspicuous. That was Joseph's family heirloom. It once adorned my wrist. After we broke up, I returned it to Joseph through someone else. So she wasn't just his girlfriend, but his fiancée. The crowd had all dispersed, leaving only me and him. My cab hadn't arrived yet. Joseph stood behind me, silent. The two of us remained quiet under the streetlight, our shadows overlapping. My thoughts drifted back to the night we broke up, when Joseph had a car accident on his way to see me. His brother called, his tone hostile. Joseph is in the hospital. Is his life in danger? You won't come if it's not serious. Please take good care of him. Sophia, he got the opportunity to study abroad, he will be successful. Why couldn't you wait? Are you that desperate for money? What he did for you, you couldn't repay in several lifetimes. Have you forgotten all of it? His brother almost broke down on the phone, barely stopping short of cursing me. Suddenly, someone else snatched the phone and smashed it. It could be said that I abandoned him. It was normal for him to hate me. How much do you owe? Joseph pulled me out of my memories, his tone indifferent. It's none of your business. I inhaled the cold air. My throat, irritated by the earlier alcohol, suddenly started coughing violently. The cold air cut through my windpipe, causing intense pain. I bent over, holding onto the lamppost, the alcohol I had drunk earlier churning in my stomach, making my eyes tear up. Joseph stood beside me, watching coldly. The taxi slowly stopped in front of me, the driver poking his head out. Are you going to Wanhee Mansion? Yes. I stood up, supporting my knees, and gasped for air as I reached for the car door. Suddenly, someone grabbed my arm and pulled me over. I was caught off guard and fell into Joseph's embrace. He asked, "Why are you going there?" Wanhee Mansion is an affluent area, not easily accessible to outsiders. I pushed Joseph's hand away, but he caught my wrist instead. His burning body heat seeped through my skin, reaching my heart. I struggled, but couldn't break free, and looked up at Joseph's dark and unreadable face. What do you want to say, Joseph? He pursed his lips, his dark eyes calm and deep, his emotions unclear. The cold wind howled, messing up my hair. I forced a smile and voiced his thoughts. You think like everyone else, that the money I earn is dirty, right? 50,000 a month, is that enough? Joseph interrupted me coldly. What do you mean? A hint of scorn finally appeared in Joseph's eyes. Aren't you short on money? 50,000, 100,000, if it's not enough, just ask. Suddenly, I raised my hand, and a loud slap echoed through the night. A clear handprint appeared on Joseph's face. A woman's exclamation sounded in the distance as she rushed out of the car. Live your life and don't overreach. I tossed these words before getting into the cab and leaving. You hit him? Stella poured me a cup of hot water. Yeah, he wanted to keep me. I curled up on the sofa, enduring waves of stomach cramps, slowly sipping the water. After a while, I suddenly rushed to the bathroom to vomit. Stella patted my back. You shouldn't drink with a bad stomach. I caught my breath, wiping the water stains left on my lips after rinsing, feeling a burning sensation in my esophagus. Was loving him for so many years worth it? I looked up, staring at my reflection in the mirror with wet eyelashes, my black hair damp and sticking to my forehead, my complexion somewhat pale. Stella's grumbles seemed distant and unclear. If you hadn't ruthlessly broken up, he wouldn't be where he is today. I thought again of Joseph's fiancée. Compared to me, she radiated splendor and brightness. I faintly remembered, many years ago, I was like that too. Only later, I fell too hard, and by the time I climbed out of the ditch, everything had changed. When Stella finished her shift at Wanhee Mansion, we walked hand in hand on the way back to our rented room. Suddenly, I received a call from Joseph's brother. Sophia, if you're in trouble, I can arrange a job for you. I didn't respond, waiting to hear more. They're getting married next month. Vivian is nice, and her family isn't bad either. I won't disturb him anymore, don't worry. He was silent for a while, then futilely explained, we just want Joseph to have a better life. Yeah. All my friends from the past, without exception, stood on Joseph's side. After hanging up, Stella's eyes were red. They don't understand anything. It's okay. It's okay. Since I had to stay here for a while, I found a job not far from home. During the interview, HR skeptically asked, do you have depression? Something from the past. I'm fine now. I have a doctor's certificate. Several companies had rejected me during the background check for this reason. This company was smaller, and that evening, I received a notice to join. I thought the class reunion would be my last intersection with Joseph. But 3 days later, Joseph unexpectedly joined our company as my boss. And my workstation was moved to just outside Joseph's office. I refuse. You can, Joseph said coldly, without lifting his head, submit your resignation to HR. I laughed in frustration. Just because I don't agree to change my seat, you're firing me? He paused his pen, finally lowering himself to talk to me. I'm just giving you a choice. Do you think I'm after something from you? I choked, remembering Stella arguing over a bit of rent last night, and forced a smile. Joseph is honorable, I'm not worried. Joseph nodded slightly. Thank you, close the door when you leave. And face your chair away from me, I don't want to see your face. Quote. For the remaining days, we barely interacted. A week later, there was a company team building. As a newcomer, I was forced to drink excessively. Sophia, if you don't drink, your salary will be docked. Don't worry, if you get drunk, we'll take you home. We're all women, what's there to fear? The manager encouraged me to drink amidst the cheering, and I downed the last glass of the night, passing out on the table. The next day, I woke up in a large bed. Bright sunlight made it hard to open my eyes. I sat up, the blanket sliding off, revealing a soft bathrobe wrapped around me. I paused, then walked out. In the bright living room, Joseph was leisurely reading the morning paper, also wearing the hotel's bathrobe. Seeing me come out, he glanced up. You're awake, breakfast is on the table, eat and then go back to sleep. A chill swept through me, my face turning pale. Joseph casually tossed the newspaper on the coffee table, slightly opening his collar to reveal ambiguous kiss marks. Unfortunately, you initiated it last night. I was struck as if by lightning, my memory of the night completely blank. Impossible. Joseph placed a contract in front of me, with my fingerprint on it, the gist being, I would be his mistress, and he would pay me $100,000 a month. This couldn't have been pressed by me. Really? Joseph chuckled lightly. Are you sure? Facing his serious and calm gaze, I opened my mouth, but no words came out. He disregarded my discomfort, pulling out a voice recorder. Last night, your monologue was accidentally recorded. Want to hear your despicable thoughts? I shuddered, feeling as if I had fallen into an ice cellar. A tremendous sense of shame overwhelmed me. Such thoughts, hidden, were already filthy. Now spoken, they became evidence, like a crime. Joseph's eyebrows were furrowed low, making it hard to discern the emotions in his eyes. Coveting a married man? Sophia. How about I let everyone hear this recording? I clenched my fists tightly, nails digging into my palms. Are you trying to get revenge on me? Yes. He replied nonchalantly. You didn't want me to have it easy. Why should I make it easy for you? Two choices. Either fulfill the contract, or I make this recording public. The ticking of the wall clock echoed, syncing with my heartbeat, pounding in my ears. My lips cracked. I numbly looked up. Then make it public. Under his cold gaze, I numbly stated, Joseph, I won't be the other woman. Joseph looked at me intently, smiling. Sophia, who do you think you are? Do you even have a choice? In the bathroom, I found my disheveled clothes. Joseph's clothes, neatly hung on the rack by the door, stood in stark contrast. The scene before me stung my eyes. I sighed, quietly changed, and left the hotel. Stella called, her voice strained. Sophia, they want $500,000. The sky was overcast, the sun nowhere to be seen. Stella hadn't saved much for my treatment, and my savings were meager. They said if you don't pay, they'll expose your situation, and they won't tell you where your aunt's remains and mementos are. I'll try to get an advance on my salary and borrow some, should have enough by next month. Okay. After hesitating several times, I dialed a number. It took a while for the other side to answer. Sophia, is something wrong? I exhaled. Dr. Leo, sorry to bother you. Leo seemed busy. Finally, he found a quiet spot and patiently asked, "Are you in trouble?" I took a deep breath. "Could you lend me 400,000? This was the first time I had asked someone for money. After saying it, I felt as if I were on fire. Suddenly, there was commotion on the other end. "Dr. Leo, emergency surgery." Got it. I hadn't had much hope, prepared for him to hang up. At the last moment, Leo briefly said, "Send me your account number, I'll transfer it today." Then the call ended. The sky was still gray. The cold, busy tone suddenly felt warmer. In the evening, my manager tapped on my desk. "We have a dinner with a client tonight. You're coming." Just a few hours earlier, I had gotten an advance on my salary. With borrowed money and my savings, I barely managed to gather $500,000. Entering the private room, I saw Joseph. His tall figure mingled effortlessly with the crowd. The crystal chandelier's light outlined his handsome profile. The manager gently pushed me forward. Suddenly, all eyes were on me. "Joseph, is she from your company?" Joseph glanced casually and smiled. "Yes, a newcomer." What kind of newcomer needs Joseph to personally bring her along? "She looks good." During the casual conversation, everyone took their seats. The manager seated me next to Joseph, whispering, "Be smart tonight, block the drinks if you need to." People subtly asked, "Joseph, can your new employee drink or not?" Before Joseph could answer, the manager quickly replied, she can drink, pushing a wine glass towards me. "Let's start with a toast." Joseph smiled silently, gently tapping the table. I picked up the glass, took a deep breath, and drank it all in one go. The spicy liquor aggressively rushed down my throat, igniting a fire in my stomach, roaring and churning. People cheered, ready to follow up, but Joseph diverted the topic. Where were we? Let's continue. The atmosphere was lively. Many wanted to toast Joseph, but he excused himself, saying his stomach was bad, and didn't drink a drop. In the end, the manager skillfully poured all the drinks into me. Eventually, I couldn't hold on and went to the restroom. The tap was running, and I was retching continuously, my hair becoming loose and falling into the sink, soon getting wet. After texting Stella, I ran out of energy, leaning over the sink with my head down, eyes closed, breathing heavily. Footsteps approached from outside, unhurried. The door opened. I thought it was some woman coming to use the restroom. Instead, Joseph's calm voice came, "Can't hold on anymore?" I mustered my strength, stood up, and wobbled towards the door. Joseph grabbed my arm, dragging me back. His hand touched the back of my neck. Burning hot. "Let go of me." The stomach acid eroded my throat. Every word was painful. Joseph effortlessly pulled me in front of the mirror, making me face it, lifting my chin, and sneered, "Take a good look at yourself. Going out like this, aren't you afraid of attracting the wrong kind of attention?" In the mirror, my eyes were moist, cheeks flushed, hair disheveled, and my collar was undone. Joseph's deep gaze blatantly surveyed my body through the mirror. I closed my eyes, trembling slightly. "Who could be more ill-intentioned than you?" Joseph chuckled softly, kissing my ear. "Come home with me tonight, okay? Get lost." He ruthlessly silenced me, forcefully squeezing the air from my lungs. Under the influence of alcohol, my blood boiled like magma, violently crashing through my body. The lights blurred into clusters, droplets seemed to be filtered through a membrane. Each one felt like sulfuric acid dripping onto my heart. Excruciatingly painful. I broke out in a cold sweat, weakly hitting him. It was like being dragged back into those dark days. Desperately staring at this dazzlingly colorful world, feeling out of place. "Joseph, can you let me go?" I was falling silently, crashing hard into the bottom of the well. It was probably painful. But I couldn't feel it anymore. "Sophia." Joseph was calling me. No longer with that look wishing me dead. He was panicked. I couldn't distinguish whether the person before me was Joseph from our younger days or the Joseph of now. I said, "Joseph, I never want to see you again." The fever came on fiercely. My consciousness blurred, my body ached unbearably, and I shivered under the covers. Outside, the north wind howled. In my delirium, I dreamed of the past. I lay on Joseph's back and asked, "Joseph, what if I die?" He walked steadily forward, carrying me, and soothed me gently. "Don't talk nonsense. It's just a fever. You'll be fine after the injection." "Hey, do you have enough for living expenses?" "Injections are expensive." "It doesn't matter." "How can it not matter? How many jobs are you working?" Joseph didn't answer. He placed me at the nurse's station, squatted in front of me, and said seriously, "As long as you're safe, nothing else matters to me." I curled up in my thick down jacket, troubled. "Once my parents stop fighting, I'll ask them for living expenses to repay you." Joseph stroked my hair, his eyes gentle. "Trust me, we'll have money in the future." But I didn't stay safe as he had hoped. The night Joseph went to another province for a competition, I returned home and pushed open my parents' bedroom door. My father was protecting another woman in his arms. My glamorous life began to crumble from that moment. The intense arguments that followed, my father's disappearance, and the Tang family's mounting debts. One late night, a group of middle-aged men demanding repayment showed up. The flickering light above, their excited shouts, the dull pain on my skin, the disgusting touch, and my mother's heart-wrenching curses, all mixed into a muddle in my head. The scene fast-forwarded. My mother was driven to suicide in the bathtub by the creditors. Stella found me, barely clothed, and took me to the distant South City. On a rainy day, I huddled in a hospital corner, wearing mourning clothes, disheveled. "She has hereditary depression. Are there any relatives?" Stella looked at me worriedly. "She has a boyfriend. He's out of town for a competition." "Notify him to come," the doctor said amidst medical jargon. "She's showing clear suicidal tendencies. Treatment will be difficult. For several years, she can't be left alone. The family needs to prepare for a long battle." My mental state then couldn't support me to seek justice. Stella and I, like lost dogs, fled the place we had grown up in. That same day, Joseph's name topped the competition's winners list. He secured a chance to study abroad. He called. All I heard was the howling wind. "Sophia," Joseph's voice was incredibly gentle, "I've kept my promise. In 3 years, I'll marry you." I looked at the slowly closing iron gate, unable to find my way home. "Joseph, I might not be able to be with you anymore." I held back my sobs, tears quietly falling. He held his breath. "Why?" I opened my mouth, hesitated for a moment. His future was bright. Should I selfishly trap Joseph's life in the rain-soaked South City? Beyond the window, a girl cried hysterically behind the fence, while a boy's face showed painful numbness and disgust. I saw love disappear from his eyes, a sight of despair. The wind blew my hair, revealing the dark bruises and marks on my neck. Wiping away my tears, I said, "Joseph, you be well, let's just end things here." The ticking of medical equipment filled my ears. The setting sun peeked through the blinds, casting a beautiful golden sheen on the sofa nearby. I blinked, waking up again in the hospital. I sat up. The man was sitting on the sofa, quietly peeling an apple. His slender, fair fingers were deft, and soon a whole apple emerged, round and clean. It was Joseph. Hearing the sound, he looked up, met my gaze, and silently pressed the call button. The doctor quickly came in, checked my pupils, and after confirming I was fine, turned to Joseph. "She's malnourished. You should focus on supplementing her diet with protein." Joseph nodded, "Thank you." The door closed. He walked to my bedside and offered me the apple. "Don't think about anything, just focus on getting better." I didn't take it. Instead, I got out of bed and began rummaging through the cupboard. My phone was gone, and there were no clothes to wear outside. He let me fumble around the room. "Joseph, what do you want?" I stood barefoot on the floor, a beam of sunlight streaming in, reflecting my pale and haggard face on the glass. "Don't you know what I want?" Joseph placed the apple on the nightstand and methodically wiped his hands with a tissue. I want you. He sat in the light, his dark eyes unabashedly fixed on me, his gaze hot and shaming. Trembling, I clenched my hands. Joseph, you can't do this to me. Joseph stood up, stepped towards me, towering over me, and tidied my hair. Why can't I? I have someone I like now, please don't pester me anymore. Is that so? There was no smile on Joseph's face. He cupped my face, leaning in close, his lips stopping just a centimeter from mine. I couldn't escape him, and in the moment I turned my head away, closing my eyes, my body uncontrollably shivered. Joseph chuckled, his cold voice pouring into my ears. Sophia, you're lying. The private hospital was located in the suburbs, surrounded by endless forests. I couldn't leave, nor could I contact anyone. I tried to seek help from the doctors and nurses, but they expressed their helplessness. Joseph came every day, mostly in the evenings, rushing over to talk to me for a while. I was very resistant to his affectionate gestures, and Joseph didn't force me. Lately, I've been dreaming a lot about the past. Back then, I used to talk about Joseph all the time. I said, Joseph, you will definitely be very wealthy in the future. Joseph sighed silently. What flavor of milk do you want today? Banana. As a result, to buy me banana milk, top student Joseph skipped class for the first time and got caught by the teacher. Later, we went to college. Rumors started to spread about him and the campus belle. Joseph hurried down in the middle of the night, gently wiping away my tears. Don't cry, if you want me, I'm yours. From now on, only you. That's not how you confess. He was taken aback, then hugged me tightly. I love you. Back then, neither of us could have guessed that, a decade later, things would turn out this way. Tomorrow, I'm getting married. The sunset hadn't yet faded, its warmth lingering. Joseph's voice brought my distant thoughts back to the present. Do you have anything to say to me? Holding half a cup of milk, I stared at his face, lost in thought. Suddenly, I realized why I had been dreaming so frequently. I was saying goodbye to the Sophia and Joseph of the past. The news about him and Vivian was on TV every day. A perfect couple. Made for each other. That was the future we had once hoped for. But what right does the current Sophia, burdened with debts, have? Congratulations, I said, I hope you have children soon. Joseph's apple peeling paused, the knife grazing his finger, quickly staining it with blood. He hesitated, then pulled out a tissue to press against it, smiling faintly. It's okay, my marriage to her is just a formality. Do you want children? I don't mind. Joseph, let's just leave it at that, okay? I suddenly felt very tired. Let's keep our dignity. Joseph stopped peeling the apple, tossing it back into the fruit basket, his gaze fixed on me. A hint of scorn showing. Just leave it at that? Why? You started it, and now you say you're tired of it. Just walk away lightly, and what am I? A dog? I closed my eyes, dispelling the sunlight's glare. Then I'll give it back to you. Joseph stiffened. What did you say? Looking at the setting sun, I said, you don't want me to have peace, I might as well die. Suddenly, my chin was seized, forcing me to face Joseph's furious eyes. Sophia, are you sick? If you wanted to die so badly, why didn't you do it back then? I can't remember when he left. That night, Joseph's brother, Roy, also a friend from many years ago, burst into the room. Sophia, what did you promise me? His barrage of questions left me bewildered. Do you know how much Joseph will lose by breaking off the engagement? You're an adult now, can you stop being capricious like before, expecting Joseph to cover everything for you? Can't you think about him for once? What's wrong? What's wrong? Roy roared at me, laughing bitterly. Joseph is calling off the wedding because of you. And you ask me what's wrong? My ears buzzed. I sat there blankly, my mind a void. His public cancellation of the wedding, where does that leave me? As a homewrecker? Roy forcefully pulled me out of bed. Come with me, weren't you capable back then? Tired of him, found someone new, so many excuses, pick one. Roy. Sophia. Roy trembled with anger. Would any of this have happened if you hadn't left? His roar echoed in the snowy wind, the north wind howling, freezing all my senses. A buzzing sound filled my ears, I couldn't hear anything. His eyes held an unprecedented loathing. As if someone like me deserved to die. Roy, he won't let me go. Roy's expression cooled. After this is settled, I'll send you away. The lights in the office building were brightly lit late at night. Roy dragged me inside, but unfortunately, the press conference had already begun. Joseph sat composed under the spotlight. Is it true that the reason for your cancelled wedding is because of a third party's involvement? Faced with the journalist's questions, he was adept in his responses. There were some differences between Vivian and me, we parted amicably. Roy's face turned iron blue, gripping my wrist tightly, not allowing me to move. But according to insiders, you rekindled an old flame with your first love. Joseph remained calm. Those are just rumors. If there are no further questions, that concludes today's press conference. The moment he stood up, someone shouted, "She's here." That's her. All cameras instantly turned towards us. I was exposed under the spotlight, disheveled and astonished. Journalists swarmed, surrounding me in seconds. Question after question. What's your relationship with Joseph? Did you really interfere in someone else's marriage? Shutter clicks were incessant. Joseph's smile froze. He stood up, parting the crowd to approach me. No. I didn't. I refuted weakly, but my voice was quickly drowned out by their intense curiosity, as questions continued to flood in. A new revelation. A journalist exclaimed excitedly, holding up a phone playing my voice, tearful and slurred, like a delirium, "Joseph, I love you." It was the recorder. Panic set in my heart. I had thought nothing else could make my life worse. When the storm really hit, I was completely destroyed. Isn't this the other woman? Shameless. The whispers of the crowd, like a slap, hit my face. My complexion drained, the recording pinning me to a pillar of shame. I'm sorry. Roy. Take her away. Joseph pushed through the crowd, his face showing panic for the first time. My vision blurred. I only heard someone reading slowly, her father in debt. Her mother committed suicide. She herself suffers from severe hereditary depression, was in a mental hospital in South City for 5 years. Isn't she mentally ill? A storm of reactions erupted. The crowd was in an uproar. Why is a mentally ill person causing trouble out here? Is she insane? Why doesn't she just die? Joseph's steps halted abruptly. He suddenly looked up at me with shock, disbelief, and incredulity in his eyes. I sat helplessly amid the clamoring crowd, feeling my blood grow colder until my entire body was frozen through. Sophia. Joseph called out to me, his voice trembling. I knew what was coming next. I was just calmly waiting for the guillotine to fall and completely destroy my life. She's also been violated. This was the last sentence of the anonymous revelation. At that moment, Joseph's face turned as pale as paper. Since that day, since returning from the company, Joseph hadn't spoken a word. The blinds had been closed for 3 days, not allowing any light to penetrate the dim room. His phone was crowded with missed calls, none of which he checked. Time seemed to have paused for him. Joseph sat there, head hanging, utterly lifeless. He still remembered the cold tone of the man who took Sophia away, saying, "We all hoped she would live, Mr. Joseph. With your ruthless methods, you easily swept away all our efforts." Stella, stopped by security outside, yelled at him, "Joseph, do you know she'll get sick if she doesn't take her medicine? Keeping her locked up is no different from killing her." Depression. Mental hospital. These terms, like countless sharp thorns, relentlessly churned in his mind, painfully pulling at his nerves. Roy knocked on the door, eventually opening a crack and standing at the entrance. "Brother, are you feeling better?" "Why?" Joseph's voice was hoarse, the dull pain in his chest unbearable. Roy was silent for a moment. I'm sorry, I thought there was no need to check, so. The information was fake, wasn't it? Joseph's voice was faint. Roy, when you told me she had several boyfriends abroad, Sophia was actually locked up in a mental hospital in South City. I'm sorry, brother, I didn't know. The apology was feeble and powerless. He knew he couldn't blame Roy entirely. A little more inquiry might have prevented this outcome. Joseph no longer had the energy to listen to Roy's defenses. Stella, ignoring the secretary's attempts to stop her, pushed the door open. The harsh light made Joseph squint, but he did not stop her. The secretary repeatedly apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't watch her closely. Leave, said Joseph. The secretary carefully closed the door, returning the room to darkness. Stella just stood there, seemingly unwilling to be associated with him. Joseph, there are some things that can be said now. A sliver of the window was open, letting in the biting cold wind. Joseph sat motionless, silently listening. Is she crazy? Why doesn't she just die? Joseph froze in his tracks, suddenly raising his head to look at me. Shock. Disbelief. Incredulity. I sat helplessly amidst the tumultuous crowd, feeling my blood cool bit by bit until my entire body was ice cold. Sophia. Joseph called out to me, his voice trembling. I knew what was coming next. I was just calmly waiting for the final blow to completely shatter my life. She's been violated as well. That was the last line of the anonymous revelation. The moment it was heard, Joseph's face turned ashen. Since that day, since returning from the company, Joseph hadn't spoken. The blinds had been closed for 3 days, leaving the room in darkness. His phone was overrun with missed calls, none of which he responded to. Time seemed to have stopped for him. Joseph sat there, head down, lifeless. He vividly remembered the icy tone of the man who took Sophia away. We all hoped for her to live. Mr. Joseph, with your ruthless methods, effortlessly dashed all our efforts. Stella, stopped by the security, yelled at him, Joseph, do you know she'll get sick if she doesn't take her medicine? Locking her up, isn't that the same as killing her? Depression. Mental hospital. These words stabbed relentlessly in his mind, fiercely wringing his nerves. Roy knocked on the door, finally opening it slightly, standing at the entrance. Brother, are you feeling better? Why? Joseph's voice was hoarse, and the dull pain in his chest was excruciating. Roy was silent for a moment. I'm sorry, I thought it wasn't necessary to check, so. The information was fake, wasn't it? Joseph's voice was barely audible. Roy, when you told me about her boyfriends abroad, Sophia was actually locked up in a mental hospital in South City. I'm sorry, brother, I didn't know. His apology seemed weak and ineffective. Joseph knew he couldn't entirely blame Roy. A little more inquiry might have changed everything. Joseph no longer had the strength to hear Roy's defenses. Stella, ignoring the secretary's obstruction, pushed the door open. The sharp light made Joseph squint, but he did not stop her. The secretary repeatedly apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't watch her closely. Go out, said Joseph. The secretary carefully closed the door, plunging the room back into darkness. I'm sick again. The winter in South City is usually just dry, but this year, unusually, it snowed. Doctors and nurses chatted idly. This year is a cold winter. Earth's climate is becoming less and less suitable for human habitation. As the new year approached, the trees outside were bare, not a leaf left. I pressed my face against the window glass, fogging it up with my breath. There's someone downstairs. He stands there every day. Isn't he cold? Stella passed by with a cup of hot milk, expressionless. Oh, is that so? He probably isn't cold. She had been in a bad mood lately. Even Dr. Leo seemed off. I was very cautious every day, afraid of upsetting them. Stella paused, realizing she might have scared me, and softened her tone. Drink your milk, and take your medicine in an hour. Dr. Leo said he'd take you out to make a snowman tonight. I took another look at the person below, feeling a sense of familiarity. Stella pulled the curtains closed. Don't look anymore, you'll strain your eyes. Okay. I returned to my bed, played games after taking my medicine, leaning against a pillow. Voices of Stella and Dr. Leo talking outside drifted in. Then, he pushed the door open. I quickly hid my phone, sitting up straight. I've taken my medicine. The smell of disinfectant permeated the room. Dr. Leo's gaze roamed over me, finally settling on my face. Sophia, I'm not going to scold you for playing games. I blushed, slowly pulling out my phone. How did you know I was playing? I play too. I recognize the background music. Dr. Leo washed his hands, took off his coat, and looked at me through the mirror with a slight smile. Aren't you going to get dressed? We agreed to make a snowman. He works in thoracic surgery at the same hospital. The first time I saw Dr. Leo was one autumn. The weather was surprisingly clear. I was picking up a ball of wool that had appeared on the other side of the fence. Dr. Leo passed by and looked down at me. I was breathless with exertion. Excuse me, can you help me pick that up? He glanced at the hospital sign and said, according to the rules, you can't touch anything dangerous. Seeing me motionless, he asked again, what do you want to do with it? Make a cat's cradle. Dr. Leo checked the time, squatted down. Then I'll play with you, but after we're done, I'll take the string away. His lunch break was short. I quietly extended my hands through the fence and played with him for a while. When he had to leave, I said, thank you. We met a few more times after that. He was always busy and didn't pay much attention to me. One day, he came again, pulling out the string. Sorry, I've been too busy recently. Then, he started talking to me. You don't talk much. Yeah, I can't say too much. Why? I'm sick. I probably can't say anything that makes people happy, and I shouldn't dump emotional garbage on others. Dr. Leo just stared at me, not saying a word. Later, he visited more frequently. Sometimes I feel very exhausted. I tried learning a few jokes to tell Dr. Leo, and each time he would look at me with gentle eyes. He asked, Sophia, what's your wish? I hope everyone is happy, including myself. I quickly put on my gear, waiting for Dr. Leo to put on his down jacket, and then he took my hand and led me downstairs. There are door checks every few steps here. Only he can take me out. Under the night sky, amidst the heavy snowfall, my hat quickly turned white. Dr. Leo handed me a small shovel. Just do what you can. Okay. The cold air oddly lifted my spirits. I carried the shovel and circled around the frozen fountain. Turning around, I suddenly saw Joseph standing not far away, his eyes red and bloodshot, and his chin covered in stubble, just looking at me. Joseph? My tone was light, slightly surprised. Joseph's lips moved. Sophia, I was wrong. In the past, I would have arrogantly asked, wrong about what? Now, I just held the snow shovel, a bit awkwardly looking down. It's okay. I've been through so much suffering that my edges have been worn down. The wind and snow howled through the night. Joseph slowly approached, squatting in front of me, his voice rough. How can it be okay? Sophia, please, talk to me. I thought for a moment, then said earnestly, I wish us a healthy new year. At that moment, the color drained from Joseph's face. Tears streamed down his face, trembling. Don't treat me like this, please. I touched his face. It was icy cold. So, like back then, I held his face earnestly and said, I wanted to see you one last time in a dignified way, but it turned into a mess. I'm sorry, it's my fault, Joseph said, if I had back then. It was my choice to leave your life. I can't blame anyone else. I spoke slowly, feeling sad. At the class reunion, I asked the class leader, and only went because you weren't there. I don't know why he lied to me. I just wanted to hear about you, to see if you were doing well. Joseph cried uncontrollably. I'm sorry, it was me. I did it on purpose. Oh. I smiled faintly, my heart a mix of emotions. Sophia, I'm sorry for not being there when you needed me the most. Joseph said, finally noticing the scars on my wrist. You don't have to feel sorry. I don't want to keep you against your will. Years later, we'd just be living a bitter life together, arguing and bringing up past grievances. That would be 1,000 times more painful than letting go of a relationship. I patiently brushed the snowflakes off his eyelashes. Joseph, seeing you successful, I'm truly happy. But I said I'd make money for you. Joseph held my hand. What do I need all that for without you? I blinked, my nose red from the cold. Look, my scarf cost over $100. I have enough money. The light in Joseph's eyes extinguished. He trembled and asked, there's no going back, right? Joseph, you have your life, and I must walk my own path. I won't return to the North City. How can hurtful words be easily forgotten? Everyone has memories. Pinned to the pillar of shame, if I were to return, every step forward would be like walking on blades. That would be infinitely more painful than cutting off a relationship. Joseph inhaled sharply, held my hand, and warmed it like he used to. About the recording, I'm sorry, I provoked you to say it. That night, I didn't touch you. My eyes warmed up. Joseph, then apologize to me, say you're sorry. He was in agony, greedily etching my face into his memory for a final farewell. I'm sorry. I gently patted his shoulder, ultimately not saying, it's okay. Joseph, live the rest of your life in peace and happiness. The snow grew heavier. I turned and strode forward, the wind blowing me off balance. The howling wind and snow faded into the distance. I couldn't tell if it was the wind or Joseph's cries. Dr. Leo, in his camel coat, stood under the dim streetlight with his hands in his pockets. I could vaguely see his sharp features and focused gaze. I approached him. As if oblivious to everything, he asked, what did you see? I brushed the snow off my hat brim, looked up with slightly red eyes. Dr. Leo. Yes. Thank you.